Hey, what's up, everybody? This is an open discussion with C3 Films. My name is Chris, and this is.
Cheryl.
And today we're going to be talking about the Disney Plus show Moon Knight. As of this recording, there have been 4 episodes that have been come out. We are going to talk about the first 3 episodes. There will be spoilers, so if you haven't seen them, go check out those episodes and then come back and watch our discussion. But let's go ahead and jump right into it. Uh, so I'm gonna let you know that I have very minimal knowledge on Moon Knight. I've read one full story from him, which is a really good story. I've been told like it's his best story. And when I started this show, I was very confused because I didn't understand why the character Moon Knight, or in this case, this guy Steven, one had a British accent, and two was named Steven. Because I thought myself, I thought his name was Mark Spector, and I thought he was American. And then I just thought to myself, you know what? Maybe they're changing things up. I don't know. And then I quickly realized, oh, they're doing this from the perspective of one of the personalities. That's kind of cool. And so, like, immediately, I really like how they do the first episode because I think it's probably the one of the most realistic portrayals for how somebody with like dissociative identity disorder, like what it would be like for that version of your personality, where it just feels like you're just waking up in random places. And then from the perspective of like, the filmmaking aspect, you get to be really cheap because you can just do all the action sequences off screen. And then all of a sudden it's just like, oh, look at these things that just happened. We're saving money. So from stylistically, I was like, this is pretty cool. But I quickly said to myself, I hope they don't do this for the whole thing because I'm going to get irritated if they follow this formula for the entirety of the series.
So I'm gonna let you know, I never heard of him before.
Yeah.
So all of this is brand new to me. I have no background whatsoever. So I'm coming to it from a perspective of I don't know what to expect at all. So
Mm-hmm.
it didn't bother me that he had an accent. His name was Steven or anything like that. Um, And I actually thought it was interesting. It was like, why is he peeling this tape off the door? Why is he chained
Mm-hmm.
up? Why does he have sand around his bed? And so I thought that was a really cool way to show that he doesn't understand that. He thinks that he sleepwalks basically, and he wants to make sure that something happened to him, and that's why he basically like set up these traps sort of traps to show to like keep himself in check, like did I go anywhere kind of thing.
Right.
So I thought that was a really cool way to start off the shows, having this mystery and way to just kind of describe and show who this guy is. And then we get to go and learn more about him when he goes to the gift shop, and that's his job. And like, oh, he's not a tour guide; he just works at the gift shop, kind of thing. So I thought that was cool. Um, but then it kind of, like you said, I once we started to figure out that there was another guy, um,
Mm-hmm.
and first I thought that it's like he's the guy, like Steven is the guy.
Right.
And then he has an alter ego that is a superhero that he doesn't know about. And so I thought it was going to be a story about Steven and then Moon Knight. And he never really gets to know who Moon Knight is. Kind of like that character from Doom Patrol. Um, the guy who has to share his body with that like mysterious alien
Oh
electric
my gosh, it's
guy.
been so long, but yes, okay.
It's kind of like that, where in the sense where they never really get to be at the same place at the same time and talk to each other, and they have to learn how to live together, kind of thing. So I thought it was going to be something like that, where they work together but in different ways, and they have to like utilize each other's strengths. So it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of like that, except for Steven and Mark can talk to each other through the reflections. And then there was a hint later on that there was a third personality, because they were blaming each other for killing people. So I
Right.
was like, oh my god, he has multiple personality disorder. And then they really make that clear later when Harrow points out that he has some kind of illness. So,
Right.
um, but to me, like there was a lot of switching back and forth between them, and there are parts of it where I thought it was cool, but it was getting a little bit much for me because they're switching back and forth like too much, and I did feel a little bit like having him have a British accent was such like kind of like a cheap way
To
to
show it's a different person.
yeah, and I'm like I'm sure Oscar Isaac can figure out a way to act himself so good that he could tell us who he is without having to change the way he talks, like
Yeah.
accent wise. So that was a little disappointing for me.
I understand, and I think what so for me, like what ended up happening was because I could understand why they were doing things the way they were doing, but the character of Steven started to feel really grating on me. Like I started to really not like him when like in the first episode I started off understanding what's going on with him and I feel it. And I think my frustration with the character comes from the idea that once he starts learning what's going on, he shows himself to be a real coward. But it's not just being a coward, it's like actively putting other people in harm's way or willingly not doing anything to help other people. Like when he tries to stop, Mark from killing those guys on the roof, and then when Mark comes back, he's in the cab and they're headed to the airport. I'm like, Steven, what are you doing? Like, your wife or Mark's wife is still here, and you just got done having this whole conversation about what like you draw the line at killing kids, and this guy's trying to resurrect Amit, who's going to judge people before they've ever done anything, including kids. And if they might do something 30 years, she's going to kill them. And you said you have a problem with it. So why are you getting on a plane to just let this still happen when you clearly don't want it to happen? So then when that started to be part of the story, I started to get really frustrated with that character whenever he specifically was on screen. Even though I really like the character, well, I won't say really like, but I'm okay with the character of Mark so far.
Yeah, that and I feel like there almost wasn't enough development between the characters. I think I got a
Mm-hmm.
good amount of Steven, but I wanted to learn more about Mark.
Mark,
And
yeah,
I feel like they needed more time before, jumping into all the mess. That they needed more time to interact with each other outside of being in chaos. So
yeah,
there was like a lack of development there. And I think that I was kind of talking about this earlier. The pacing of the show is really fast, and I feel almost as if it could slow down a little bit, especially since it's a series.
mm-hmm.
We talked a little bit about how it's kind of like almost movie paced, where you spend 15 minutes to get to know Steven, and then boom, you're in the heat of you know um, inciting incident happens,
Right,
and like usually in series you don't get the real inciting incident until like the end of the episode, and that's when the series really gets started. Because
mm-hmm.
I spend the whole beginning of the episode, the very first episode, dropping hints about what the show is going to be about, who the characters are, introducing them, setting everything up. But there was almost no setup, and it was like just bam, you're right into it, and you're kind of just figuring it out at the same time as him. And while I do think that's a good idea, like they do that in like Hangover and stuff, where they kind of just drop you in and you kind of have to
Mm-hmm.
figure it out as you go, or like Memento, everyone's just figuring it out as we go along. But I feel like it didn't need to happen like that for this show. They just could spend a little bit more time getting to know the characters and who they are, and just having a little bit more setup. So by the time we get to episode 3, I feel like the movie's almost over, but it's just episode 3 of a series, and I don't know how many episodes or seasons they're gonna be, but it's just maybe there's just a lot of stuff to cover. I'm not really sure.
So I'm pretty sure it's a limited series, but yeah, I also don't know. I haven't looked up how many episodes the series is going to be, and so I'm not sure how necessary it is for them to move quickly so in order to like try to cover everything they want to cover. But like I definitely feel similarly to you, where I just kind of after getting to know Steven, we spent an entire episode just on Steven. I would like to get to know Mark a little bit better. I want to get to know who he is as a character, like what makes him tick, so that I can see the juxtaposition between the two. Like I know that one's brave and one's not. One's American, one's British, but some of the other, and I know that Mark wants to protect his wife because of what Khonshu wants to do as far as having another vessel. So I get that, but yeah, like some of just the other things, like when they start to fight, and he's like when he's fighting with those guys on the roof, and he's like making jokes while he's about to fight. I'm like, okay, so I'm seeing more of your character right now, and so I was like, that's a good thing, and I just wanted to get more opportunities to see that. So one of the other things that I wanted to bring up about was that even though this is a Disney Plus show, it doesn't have the normal Disney Plus budget that you would see on other shows like The Mandalorian or other things like that. Because like when they do that car chase in the first sequence in the first movie, and they have like those logs come down, there's a little bit of a spotty CGI moments in those sequences where I'm just like, oh, this reminds me of like classic TV right now, even though it's still higher budget than regular classic TV. But the bad CG that you've seen on television shows when they do things, and there was like some of those moments in that first episode that kind of like like we go, whoa, okay, you guys didn't give as much money to this show. But
even Moon Knight is like when I first saw the actual Moon Knight character in the suit, I was like, dude, he looks very animated. I was like, why didn't they just get an actual costume with a real guy in it? Why did they have to animate
because
this whole
it works
thing?
so well for Green Lantern.
What? Oh, because it works so well for Green Lantern. Yeah.
No, but like, I like the design of the suit though, and
Yeah.
to tell you the truth, I actually love his actual suit, like, and that's like a comic reference. Like I've seen that, you see that suit in the comics and everything. So I like seeing that suit, and I do like the fact that they use the different suits to denote which personality has like in control at any given point. But I'm not too. I don't like Steven that much. So even though I like the white suit, I can't like it that much because I don't like Steven as a character.
Right. Well, okay. So let's talk a little bit more about the show in general.
Mm-hmm.
I do feel a little bit like it's very Indiana Jones like, and I don't know how I feel about that because it just doesn't feel very unique. Because it just seems a lot like it's another hero who has to save the world, and that's pretty much it. And you have this black and white villain, Harrow, who is just always one step ahead of the heroes. It's just like not Lord of the Rings, Indiana Jones, and even down to like the the ancient mysteries, the decoding and figuring out one place leading to the other, having to decipher those constellations of a modern star, by the way, that was made 2,000 years ago. And
well, they addressed that at the end of the third episode.
Yes. Did they did they mention it in the show itself?
What they do, like, wait, you're referring to the fact that they have to like read the constellations or something, right?
Yeah, they
and, like,
piece it together, and Steven tapes it together, and it's the shape of a star, but it's a modern star. But supposedly they made this 2,000 years ago. So I was like, this is stupid.
That's what you meant. Oh. Interesting. I didn't catch that.
Yeah. So I was just like, this is kind of hokey, guys. And the whole time I was like, why don't they just follow Harrow because he has the compass. Why do they have to go this other route and decipher old
Well, because they were trying to get,
thingies?
I think because they were trying to get ahead of him because they didn't want to be behind him when he found the thing. They wanted to get there before him
He
so
was
that they could
already
get
there.
I mean, basically.
So you guys are taking the long way around for no reason because he's already digging, and I don't know. Maybe someone can like split up and just be like, "Did you find it yet?" And while you're doing that, I'm gonna go see if I can get ahead. You know,
Mm-hmm.
split the party. It's not a horror movie. It's fine.
I mean, I think it goes to horror movie territory. I've actually seen the fourth episode as well, but so I won't. But we're not going to talk about that episode right now. We're talking about the first three. But there's a moment that it feels like it's a horror movie, and I was like, oh, wow, this is kind of interesting. But yeah, but as far as like these first like three episodes and like as far as the actual conflict, yeah, no, I see what you're saying as far as the inspirations that it's drawing upon and the similarities that you're finding. I feel like the whole thing with the multiple personalities is the part that makes Mark Spector, I guess, kind of like his own character or make him feel a little different. But it's so weird in the Marvel universe, right? Because this is the same universe with characters like Deadpool and characters like Legion. And obviously Deadpool doesn't have multiple personalities, but he's like quirky and everything else like that. Um, and then Legion does have multiple personalities, and each of his personalities has a different superpower. And they had a television show called Legion that came out on FX like years ago. So like, so you can draw like certain comparisons between him and like Mark Spector's character um, in this movie, or Mark Spector. But I feel like they I feel like I'm curious where else they're gonna go because obviously there are other personalities, like you said. There's one at least that we haven't seen, and I'm wondering if that's gonna like that seems to be like the most violent personality because it kills even more than Mark and Steven do. So yeah, I'll be curious to see if that comes into play. I also just wonder how much of the superhero aspect they're really gonna dive into it because there's certain it feels like right now it's very minimal. um, you don't see him in the suit that much, and like by the end of like the like episode three, he basically loses his powers, and so it's like wow, that's and like you talk about movie pace, like yeah, that's basically something you would see in a movie where you start the movie off and the guy that has his powers and he has his moment in the middle where he's like doing everything and he's awesome and then he loses his powers and then the last part of the movie is about him basically figuring out how to survive without them and then he gets the powers back at the last like 10 minutes of the film for the big battle, which is definitely coming in like the last couple episodes. But yeah, so I'm curious just how they're going to like where they're going to go to try to help it to stand out. Right now it's not like it's a show that it's not like I don't like the show. But I do feel like the show is just okay so far. There are highs and lows for me. Um and most of my lows revolve around Steven, admittedly, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what to feel actually cuz I don't dislike it, but I'm not like 100% grabbed either, you know? Like
Mm-hmm.
I'll continue watching it, but it's not my favorite. I feel like a lot of the other Marvel series like WandaVision and Loki have a much better premise, a much better pace, more intriguing storyline. Um, this just feels very. It's more about the character than the actual story.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I also at the same time feel like I'm not getting enough character development from the main character. So it just feels like kind of average, but I like it better than Hawkeye.
Oh, well, so here's one thing I'm curious about. Like, at the end, do you think that he'll still have multiple personalities, or do you feel like I feel like there's a reveal coming for Steven where Steven realizes that he is the other personality? Because I feel like Steven doesn't get that he's the other personality right now. And so, like, I feel like that's a reveal that's coming for that character where he has to just relinquish control of the body, or do you think that maybe Mark is going to willingly choose to no longer be the lead um, controller of the body because of his guilt and everything.
I think they're gonna learn how to share.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, because there has to be some kind of harmony or coexistence. Because if they can't coexist, they can't exist.
True. True. Do you feel like do you think you'd want to see this character in a movie?
Steven, no. Oh, you mean Moon Knight?
Yeah.
I don't know, cause I feel like I'm not getting a good representation of the character or of the hero
Mhm.
because I don't think that the show is doing it justice because I don't think it's being explored to its fullest potential. Like I can think of a bunch of things that I would do instead of
Right.
this.
One of the things that actually now I remember, one of the things that stood out to me was that this doesn't necessarily feel like it's within the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Like, and I get it, you don't always need to make reference to the blip or anything else like that. Like people move on, but something about the show just feels like it's almost removed, even though like because essentially what this show is doing is it has introduced the Egyptian gods as being real canonized gods, the same way like Thor and all like the Norse gods were actually real, so or based off of real like deities or whatever. But so now we have Egyptian gods, which I think is an interesting concept that are real within the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But then I remember asking myself, I was like, wait a second. So do I see like Anubis going toe to toe with like I don't know, like Captain Marvel or something in like a future movie? And and the answer is no. But I mean, that's the whole thing about Marvel, right? Like all these things all take place in the same world, but for whatever reason, at least the way it's being presented right now, outside of like the logo, it doesn't really feel like they occupy the same space as like the Eternals and everything else.
Yeah, I mean, they never really give room for other interaction in that sense either, so it's kind of hard to say. But we also know that there's multiple universes, so this could just be another universe where, you know, nothing else exists, or at least not in London or Egypt. So
Right.
that could be it, but I think it's perfectly fine to just focus on them. It doesn't, not everything has to be woven into the bigger universe because that can get very exhausting.
No,
It's
I
also
think
like when
yeah.
you put heroes next to each other, you kind of like, when they're in their own solo movie, then they're like awesome. But then when they're, in a group, then, maybe they're not so awesome anymore because they're standing next to, someone else that is a lot stronger or more OP. And so it's like
Mhm.
probably why they couldn't have Captain Marvel in, Infinity Wars that much because she's very OP.
Right. Yeah. No, and maybe, and I don't know. We'll see. I'm not really sure. I feel like Mark Spector might be a character that, um, but maybe he's the opposite because there are certain characters that shine more as like, um, as extras within somebody else's movie. Like they did that with the Hulk. The Hulk started to really shine as just another character in other people's movies, and maybe Mark Spector becomes a character like that. Um, but we'll have to wait and see. But I think I agree with you right now as far as like him as a character, like Mark as a character. We haven't gotten to see so much of who he is, and because we've gotten to spend so much time with Steven, and I personally don't like Steven, it but that's like the most association I have with this Moon Knight, you know, person as a whole. It makes it hard to like fully get behind everything. And even like I'd even like to see more of the relationship with Khonshu explored. Like that's another strong element. I mean, and right now Khonshu is just gone, right? But we're not really seeing too many. There's not even like a scene of just Mark and Khonshu just having like a long conversation. Like it's just bits and pieces. So and I think it's probably because they don't want to have to keep doing a big CGI like crow dead crow bird thing. But I think that that's something that would really help because we need to know more about Khonshu. We need to know more about Mark himself, and yeah, just who he was before he met Khonshu, and then how meeting Khonshu changed him. Because right now we don't really have a sense of any of that.
Yeah, and I feel like because we're really just discovering all of this information through Steven, I really don't think we're getting to know either of those characters, Mark or Khonshu, very well.
Yeah.
Um, and it's funny that, because I didn't know that Steven is not the main guy. And now that I know that, I'm like, why did they do that? Why did they I mean, I get it. Like, maybe if they started it that way and so that we could have that really cool thing about him waking up in the middle of, like, another place and he could hear a voice and then, he's coming in and out of consciousness. But, like, that whole beginning scene with the car chase and everything, that was really cool. I really liked that. But now that I know that he's not the main character, I wish that there was a way that they could, kind of phase out of that and put it back into Mark so that he really takes front to be the main character of the show. And I think they're doing that now, but I don't think they should have waited until episode 3 to do that.
Yeah, I like because they did it for episode 1 because he's representation of the audience. He doesn't have all the answers while Mark would have. So because he doesn't have all the answers, he's like us, and when he gets the answers, we get the answers. So that's the reason they did that way. But I think after episode 1, that would have been the time to start
Switch
being
gears.
like, okay, like now let's get into who Mark Spector is, and let's just go from there. We did the thing, we had our fun. Now let's tell our story. So I think that would have been nice, but they decided to do it the way they did it, and we'll see where that goes. But I agree with you. I think that it's slightly unfortunate because if the main character is Mark, we're at episode 3. We're about to go into episode 4, and it sounds like there's only 6 episodes. We still don't really know who he is as a character.
Yeah, I mean, I almost think it would have been cool if they just had episode 1 be about Steven and then switch gears and have episode 2 be about Mark, and now we're only seeing Mark's perspective. Where he wakes up and now we're getting his perspective of coming in and out from having Steven be in between them, and or maybe even see some of the same scene, like his side of that car chase kind of thing. That would have been cool, and that would have been a great way to switch it over to Mark, and it would have been intriguing visually and storytelling wise to get to see that side of the action happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100% agree. I guess the last little bit that, as far as questions go, you mentioned the villain briefly. What do you think about Ethan Hawke's villain?
That is bad. So one-dimensional. At some point, I was like, oh, what if he's a good guy? Because he's trying to, bring peace and everything. And then I was like, oh, it's kind of like, what's his name? Gosh, I can't remember. Thanos. And I was like, no, he's not even Thanos. It's just too black and white. And then there's this part where he speaks Mandarin.
I was like, that's what I wanted to bring up. The moment I heard Mandarin, I was like, yo, Cheryl's about to be upset.
Yeah, and not an Asian person in sight. And they're speaking a really, really bad Mandarin. It's like they didn't even try. Did they even hire a coach, or did they just use Google Translate for something and they're like, here, let's just try to read that? I don't even speak Mandarin.
I know.
Bad.
But you've heard it, and I understand.
Anyway, I'll just be angry somewhere else.
Oh my god, that's so funny. Yeah, we'll see where it goes. Apparently there are 6 episodes. So episode 4 is out. We have episode 5 and 6 coming out soon. Or 5 coming out soon, and 6 next week. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, that's what we thought about the first 3 episodes of Moonlight, everybody. But what about you guys out there? What did you guys think about Moon Knight? Have you been liking the show so far? Are you excited to see more? Do you feel like we did about how we wish kind of we could know Mark a little better, or do you feel like they've been giving enough information? Is Steven your favorite character? Whatever you thought, comment below. Let us know. And way down there, if you give us a like, share, subscribe. Even if you don't, though, I've been Chris, and this has been
Cheryl, and we'll see you all next time.